Think about the last time you needed to have a difficult conversation. Maybe it was telling a friend how their words hurt you. Maybe it was admitting a mistake to your partner. Or maybe it was bringing up an uncomfortable issue with a colleague. You felt the weight of it on your chest. You knew it had to be done, and yet you waited. You told yourself you'd do it tomorrow or next week or when the right moment appeared. But the right moment never came. Instead, the anxiety grew larger, the silence heavier, and the relationship more strained. This is the universal human trap of avoidance. We postpone the conversations that matter most, even when delay only increases our stress. If you've experienced this, you're not alone. And here's the good news. Breaking free doesn't require courage the size of a mountain. It requires one simple science-backed shift that melts the inner block and allows you to begin with calm confidence in just a few seconds. To understand why we avoid hard conversations, you have to see what's happening in your brain. Difficult conversations are coded by your nervous system as social threats. When you anticipate them, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, lights up as if you were facing a predator. Your heart rate rises, your muscles tense, your mind races with what-if scenarios. Will they get angry? Will I hurt them? Will they reject me? This anticipation creates emotional friction so strong that your brain decides the safest move is to delay. Postpone the conversation, and the stress decreases temporarily. But here's the catch. Your relief reinforces the habit of avoidance. The more you avoid, the stronger the loop becomes. That's why you can think about the conversation for days, even weeks, and still feel stuck. The real barrier isn't the words you need to say. It's the physiological fear response that hijacks your system. And that's exactly what we're going to break through. Here's the mental model I want you to remember. Pause, anchor, open. 3 steps, 1 loop, 5 seconds to action. First, pause. When you notice the surge of resistance, your chest tightens, your thoughts start racing, you interrupt the automatic avoidance response. Instead of letting your brain launch into endless scenarios, you simply pause. Second, anchor. You bring your nervous system back under control with a grounding action. Place both feet flat on the floor, press your hand against a solid surface, and take 1 slow breath. This signals safety to your body, calming the amygdala. Third, open. In this calmer state, you don't try to rehearse the entire conversation. You only open the first line. You say, "Can we talk for a moment?" Or, "There's something I'd like to share." That's it. You don't need to plan the entire script. You only need to open the door. Once the door is open, the rest will flow naturally. Pause, anchor, open. That's your loop. Why does this work? Because the hardest part of any difficult conversation isn't the middle, it's the beginning. The buildup of anticipation makes the first words feel impossible, like breaking through a wall. But once you're inside the conversation, momentum carries you. Your brain adjusts, your nervous system stabilizes, and your natural communication skills return. The wall you thought was massive is actually paper thin. You just need a small push to get through. Pause, anchor, open gives you that push in a way that is both gentle and immediate. You're not forcing yourself with sheer willpower. You're tricking your brain into realizing, I am safe enough to begin. Let's break down the science behind each step, because understanding the why makes it stick. The pause interrupts the fear loop. Anxiety thrives on speed. Your thoughts race, your body reacts, and you get swept along. By pausing, you insert a wedge between trigger and reaction. It's like hitting the brakes before your car speeds out of control. The anchor is the physiological reset. Research shows that grounding actions, pressing your hand, focusing on your feet, controlling your breath, signal the parasympathetic nervous system to engage. This lowers arousal, reducing the feeling of threat. Finally, the open is the micro-action. Instead of overwhelming your brain with the task of having the whole conversation, you shrink the demand to one tiny step: begin. This leverages what psychologists call the threshold effect. Once you cross the threshold, the resistance drops dramatically. It's the same principle that makes starting a workout harder than finishing one, or writing the first sentence harder than completing a page. By focusing only on opening, you bypass the mountain and step onto the path. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you need to tell your boss that you're overwhelmed with your workload. For days you avoid it because you imagine them being disappointed or dismissive. Your stress builds until you dread even seeing them. Now, watch what happens with pause, anchor, open. You notice the avoidance pattern. Your heart jumps when you think about approaching them. That's your cue. You pause, stop the spiral, and place your feet firmly on the ground. You press your hand lightly against your desk, take one steady breath, and feel your body settle. Then, instead of rehearsing the whole speech, You simply say to yourself, all I need to do is open. You walk over and the only words you focus on are, do you have a moment to talk? That's it. The door is open, and as the conversation unfolds, you realize it's not nearly as terrifying as your brain made it seem. You've broken the loop. This framework isn't just theory. It aligns with what neuroscience tells us about exposure and regulation. Avoidance strengthens fear circuits while small repeated exposures weaken them. Each time you use pause, anchor, open, you teach your brain a new association. Difficult conversation does not equal danger. Over time, your threshold lowers. Conversations that once felt paralyzing start to feel manageable. And eventually, you'll notice something profound. Not only can you handle difficult conversations, but you can enter them with clarity and calm, even when stakes are high. Now, I know what you might be thinking. What if I mess it up? What if I say the wrong thing or they react badly? Here's the insight that will free you. The success of a difficult conversation doesn't depend on saying everything perfectly. It depends on starting it honestly. Perfection is impossible, but presence is enough. When you pause, anchor, and open, you bring your authentic self into the conversation. You create a space where real dialogue can happen, and that is infinitely more powerful than rehearsed perfection. In fact, research on communication shows that authenticity and vulnerability increase trust far more than polished words. People don't remember flawless scripts, they remember sincerity. So don't aim to deliver a perfect speech, aim to open a real connection. The rest will follow. Let's test this right now together. Think of one conversation you've been putting off. Maybe it's telling someone you need more support. Maybe it's addressing a misunderstanding. Maybe it's expressing gratitude you've been holding back. Picture it clearly. Notice the tension in your body when you imagine starting it. That's the wall of avoidance. Now imagine pausing, feeling your feet, pressing your hand, taking a breath. Your body settles. Then imagine saying just the opening line. There's something I'd like to share. How does that feel? Not so overwhelming, right? Because your brain is realizing the truth. It's not the whole mountain you need to climb. It's just the first step. And you can always take the first step. This is the power of reframing. By breaking down what feels massive into what is truly small, you regain agency. You no longer see the conversation as an impossible task, but as a doorway you can open. And once you open it, you step into possibility. The possibility of resolution, of understanding, of growth. Even if the conversation is hard, even if it brings discomfort, it moves you forward. Avoidance never does. Avoidance keeps you stuck in silence, carrying invisible weight. Starting frees you. That's why pause, anchor, open isn't just a technique, it's a liberation. It teaches you that the courage you've been waiting for doesn't come before you begin. It comes after you begin. And now, you know how to begin every time. There's another layer we need to explore because starting the conversation is only half the story. The deeper shift comes when you realize that every difficult conversation you've been avoiding isn't just about words left unsaid. It's about energy you've been carrying. Think about it. Every time you avoid telling the truth, you're holding a weight inside your chest. That weight shows up as tension, irritability, even exhaustion. Avoidance is not neutral, it's costly. And the longer you postpone, the heavier it becomes. But here's the liberating truth. The moment you open the conversation, even imperfectly, you release that weight. You give your nervous system a signal. I'm no longer trapped. This is why people often say, I feel so much lighter, after finally talking about something they feared. It's not a metaphor, it's physiology. Your body has been bracing for a danger that never arrived, and once you step into dialogue, the brace softens. So the reward of using pause, anchor, open isn't just clarity in relationships, it's freedom in yourself. Let's make this model even more vivid by looking at the two paths of avoidance and action. On the path of avoidance, the cycle looks like this. Anticipate conversation, feel fear, postpone, temporary relief. But then, anxiety grows stronger. You loop endlessly, and each postponement makes the conversation harder to start next time. On the path of action, the cycle looks different. Anticipate conversation, feel fear, pause, anchor, open. At first, the fear still arises, but the moment you open, you break the loop. Anxiety decreases instead of grows. Over time, your brain rewires. The anticipation no longer triggers as much fear because it has learned the truth. I can handle this. That is the fork in the road. Every time you face a difficult conversation, you stand at that fork. One path makes the weight heavier, one path makes it lighter, and you now know the three-step loop that shifts you to the lighter path. But here's a key insight. When you practice pause, anchor, open, you don't need to wait for a huge, life-altering conversation to test it. You can begin with small moments. Say you need to ask a colleague to adjust a deadline. Say you need to tell a friend you're too tired to meet. Say you want to share a small frustration with your partner. These are low-stakes opportunities to practice. Each time you do, you strengthen the muscle of opening. Then, when the bigger conversations arrive, the ones that really matter, you're ready. The practice will already be wired into your body, and that preparation makes the difference between spiraling in fear and stepping forward with grounded calm. Now let's address the fear that often lingers even after you understand the framework. The fear of the other person's reaction. What if they get angry? What if they shut down? What if they don't understand? Here's the empowering truth. Their reaction is outside your control. Your responsibility is not to control them. It's to express your truth with clarity and respect. That's all. And when you do that, you've succeeded regardless of the outcome. Because success is not measured by whether they respond perfectly. Success is measured by whether you showed up authentically. Remember, authenticity doesn't guarantee comfort, but it does guarantee integrity. And integrity is what allows you to look at yourself in the mirror and know, I spoke my truth. That's the kind of inner confidence that grows every time you practice this loop. It's not about avoiding discomfort. It's about building the strength to walk through it. Let's ground this in one final exercise you can carry with you. Imagine a conversation you've been putting off right now. Picture it in detail. Notice the tension in your stomach, the racing thoughts. That's your body bracing against the unknown. Now apply the loop. Pause, anchor, open. Pause, interrupt the spiral. Anchor, feel your feet, press your hand, breathe once. Open, say just the first line. There's something important I need to share. That's it, nothing more. The moment you imagine that, notice what shifts. The tension softens. The mountain shrinks to a step. And you realize the block was never the words. The block was the anticipation. And anticipation can always be broken with one small embodied action. Here's the beautiful paradox. The more you practice beginning conversations, the less terrifying they become, and the more your relationships deepen. Because people feel it when you stop hiding. They may not always agree, they may not always react the way you want, but they will sense your honesty. And honesty builds trust, even when it brings friction. Avoidance erodes trust, even when it looks like keeping peace. That's why mastering this simple loop isn't just about relieving your anxiety, it's about strengthening your connections. Every time you choose to open instead of postpone, you're investing in stronger relationships, clearer boundaries, and a lighter self. So let's bring it home. Difficult conversations will always exist. That's part of being human. You can't eliminate them, but you can eliminate the paralysis around them. You now have a framework that makes it simple. Pause, anchor, open. 3 steps, 5 seconds, infinite freedom. Pause interrupts the spiral. Anchor calms your body. Open breaks the wall. That's all it takes to move from silence to speech, from avoidance to presence, from carrying the weight to letting it go. And once you start, you'll discover something life-changing. The conversations you feared most often become the ones that transform you the most. They lead to clarity, growth, and connection. But you only access that transformation by beginning. So here's my invitation. Think of one conversation you've been postponing. Don't overthink it. Don't plan the perfect script. Use the loop. Pause, anchor, open. Take the first step today. Because courage isn't about never feeling fear. It's about moving through it with tools that work. And now, you have the simplest tool of all. Try it once and you'll see. The weight will lift, the wall will crumble, and you'll step into a lighter, freer version of yourself.